Hi, friends. Welcome to Dads and Daddies, a podcast about the lives and times of adult gay men in the here and now. I'm Brian Rubin Sowers, the dad.
And I am Judson Morrow, the daddy.
Hi, Judson.
Brian, I made this joke last week that this was becoming a theater review podcast. But I really think we should kick it off talking about our date night last night.
Judson and I had a very special date night last night. We were invited to the opening night performance of Oh, Mary on Broadway.
I have a challenge for you today. Are
Okay.
you ready?
Yes?
Tell us what Oh, Mary is about in a tweet.
In 140 characters? I wonder if there's any listeners that haven't heard of Oh, Mary. Probably. Oh, Mary is... I can't summarize it that quickly,
Yes, you can.
but there's so much I want to say.
Try it.
Okay. Well, it's more than what it's about, but on the surface, it is about Mary Todd Lincoln and Abraham Lincoln in the days leading up to his assassination.
At the end of the Civil War.
At the end of the Civil War. That is like the most surface description of the show.
Yeah, that's great.
But
And we follow Mary and her dreams.
yes, you follow Mary and her dreams. But it is written by and starring Cole Escola, who is a genius and a performer whose career my husband and I have followed for many, many years. We've seen Cole perform at the Duplex, a small cabaret on Christopher Street next to the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village. And Cole is known for sketch comedy typically, but very, I hate the term avant-garde because it's all very funny and relatable, but
It's like a little skewed. I think
Yes.
people who have a more conservative sense of humor might call it weird
yes.
or strange. I don't.
But so I've seen Cole over the years, and as I expressed to you last night, like my experiences of Cole have been, I've always respected everything that they do, and see the humor in it, but I've always left their shows with a tiny bit of a headache. Like it's always been just like a slightly too much for me. And so when I heard that Oh, Mary was coming off Broadway, I didn't jump at getting tickets because it sounded like one long sketch to me. And then people started seeing it, and the word of mouth and the hype was just growing and growing. And Toby said, we really need to see this show. And so we got tickets off Broadway, and I couldn't believe that it lived up to and surpassed all the hype that I had heard. I loved it so much and didn't stop laughing from start to finish. And just, it's so smart. Like, yes, it's funny. And yes, Cole themselves describes it as stupid, but it is so smart. And it's just for me, I just am in awe of this talent and of this mind and of this comic genius and of everybody on that stage. I mean, there's I think 5 actors in the show, and they are all such comic talents, and it's so beautifully directed, and you kind of just can't believe, or I couldn't believe what was happening before my eyes. And so I ended up seeing it a second time off Broadway, and then they said it was moving to Broadway, and I just couldn't believe it. It just does not, to me, feel like a Broadway show. But then we saw it on Broadway last night, and it was your first time, so I'd love to hear your impressions.
It was my first time. There are so many things that I encounter in my life that I'm like, oh my God, 400 people said yes to this in order for it to be in front of my eyes. I'm thinking specifically about like Sour Patch Oreos. Like, no one said no? No one had the courage to say no? And the whole time while I was watching the show on Broadway, I thought, wow, a lot of amazing and cool and smart people said yes the entire time to make this happen.
Yeah.
I also get nervous about hype, especially when all the gays, quote unquote, find something funny.
Yeah.
Because when I hear that all the gays think something is funny, I'm like, well, a lot of you never spent any time living out of your car, and
Right.
it shows.
Right.
Like, I don't always find the things that all gays find funny as funny.
Right.
Trauma. But I was like a little smirky when it started, and then I LOL'd like 20 times throughout the show.
Yeah.
The other thing that I loved about it that you told me, you were like, this did not get researched. They did no research about the actual
Yes, this
Abraham
is not at all
Lincoln.
based in real history.
And what I realized too is like, it's not any more or less incorrect than the history that we get taught as American students in public school, right? Or at least it's a very small part of the story.
Right.
So our recommendation is go see it. I am always the one to be cost conscientious. So Brian did some research about ticket prices. What have we got for you?
Well, so there are a variety of ways to get in to see the show. I checked this morning after, so it opened last night. We're recording this on July the 12th. It opened last night, and which means the reviews are out this morning, and it is across the board rave reviews. Many of them, including the New York Times, saying that it's even better on Broadway than off Broadway. That the performances are so big that it kind of needs that space. And I looked online this morning, and there were plenty of seats to be had. It's only a 12-week run right now, going through September 15th. But many of those seats in the orchestra are just under $300 a ticket. In the front mezzanine are about $250 a ticket. That being said, they do have a limited number of rush tickets available every day on the day of the performance in person at the box office. It's the Lyceum box office on 45th Street, just east of Times Square. There is also a digital lottery. So the rush tickets, are $43. The digital lottery tickets are $47. And if you go to ohmaryplay.com, there's a link there where you can enter the lottery, and you can enter at midnight one day before the performance, and then they're drawn that day between 10 and 3. So those are a couple ways. Judson was also telling me that he saw that there are some seats in the balcony that are labeled as obstructed view, but because it was opening night and because we're not the celebrities in real life that we are in our minds,
Yet.
we were seated in high up there, and we were in seats that Judson says were marked as obstructed view, and we didn't find them obstructed at all. So
$84. As someone who constantly plays budget triage, if you can not buy something so you have $84 for the show, even though it's indicated as an obstructed view, it's fucking great.
Yeah, and it's not something where there are tons of moving set pieces. There's, if something is obstructed, it's maybe, maybe a little bit of movement here and there, but you're not going to miss anything significant. And even from as almost high up as Lyceum Theater goes, I really still felt that I saw faces and expressions and all, everything that was important. And again, it was Judson's first time, and he, you really seemed like moved by the end of it, just in terms of just like how queer a show could be on Broadway. Because this show is queer.
Oh, yeah, totally. Super campy, super queer. It felt great.
Yeah,
it felt great.
I said this about Cats, the Jellicle Ball. It is a celebration of queerness. It is and it is raunchy, and it is ratchet, and it is foul. But it is really also beautiful just to see this kind of script and talent being celebrated on a Broadway stage, and for it to be the hottest ticket in town right now is super, super, super exciting.
New York City's hottest gay bar is the lobby of the Lyceum Theater after O'Mary. There were at least 70 guys that I was like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah. So we're gonna actually keep our first segment this week pretty short because we're very excited. This is a very special day. We are having our very first guest on Dads and Daddies.
So excited.
I'm
so
so excited.
exciting.
Yes. I'm gonna wait until he's here to introduce him and talk more about him. But we will be right back, and we'll be here with our friend Chris Murphy.
See you soon.
So we're so excited. This is a first for us. We are threesome virgins.
Oh, we're having a hot threesome right now.
Wait, I didn't know you'd never had a threesome before.
No,
on this
you are our
podcast.
very first guest.
Wow, I'm so honored.
Yes.
To be the special guest. Wow.
When Toby and I had dinner with you and your boyfriend, and I told you that we were doing this, one of the first things you said was, "I want to be on."
Of course.
And I was so touched by that. So we are here with Chris Murphy.
Hi.
So your bio on X,
Oh my God. I don't even know what it
the
is.
social media platform formerly known as Twitter,
Yeah, R.I.P.
says you're a staff writer at Vanity Fair,
That is true.
an actress, comedian, and good time girl,
All of that is absolutely true.
and a U.S. senator from Connecticut.
That might not be true, but it could be true if I
Oh my
tried.
God, I've never met anyone in politics.
It's crazy because honestly, I'm like, if I could be a senator if I actually tried. If I really put my effort into it, I'm pretty sure I could be the U.S.
So
senator.
there is a
Connecticut.
U.S. senator from Connecticut named Chris Murphy.
Yeah, and people do confuse us more than you'd think. Like, I will get DMs being like, I can't believe, like, why are you tweeting about Wicked when you should be legislating in fixing, the potholes in Connecticut? And I'm like, I'm actually, sorry, actually, that's not my job. I know we have the same exact name. We don't really look that much alike. And if you did like a little bit of research, you could see that, but it's fine. I'm happy to field any and all DMs from angry constituents of Connecticut.
And so we are the kind of like tagline for our podcast is it's about the lives and times of adult gay men in the here and now. You, of course, are not an adult at 30 years old.
Finally, somebody knows that 30 is still baby.
Brian,
be baby.
ageism. We've talked about
You can
this.
still be baby.
I know, we've talked about this.
You can be baby at any age, but I think especially at 30, you're just starting to become an actual. It's like you're the baby of actual adulthood.
Well, and as we've talked about it at length between us and somewhat on this podcast, Judson feels there is no age limit to daddiness. That one can be a daddy at any age.
Any age.
Any age. Even young?
Especially young.
Especially young.
Yeah. But the lives and times of Chris Murphy in the here and now, to my mind, are a sight to behold. You seem to be anywhere and everywhere.
I try. I try. Booked and busy. That's the summer. It's booked and busy.
But what impresses
Brat
me, so like, you're always on a stage somewhere. You're always curating something.
I'm gonna keep going. This is so nice.
You're
I should
on
be
like
a third more often.
You're on red carpets, but the part that impresses me the most when I'm going through your social media is that you are also all over the city and all over the country, like celebrating your friends' milestones.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out because I think that the stage stuff and the curating stuff and the interviewing and the red carpet stuff, that's all great. And that's I'm passionate about that. I love that. I'm a writer, but I was a theater kid, if you couldn't already tell, or if you didn't already know. So brace yourselves if you're listening at home. But I love to be on stage. I love to talk to people. I love interviewing people. I love all of that. I also love and cherish my friends who are all getting married all right now, all in the next, the last 3 years and the next couple of years. But it is kind of exhausting. It is a little like
It's amazing to me, but you seemed like.
But I'm happy to be there, and I would hate to not be invited to anyone's wedding. So
You're in the friends getting married chapter.
I'm in that.
And
then
milestone birthdays, a lot of 30-year-old
A lot
birthdays.
of 30-year-old birthdays. There are trips for those too. They keep used to be 40-year-old trips, but now they're doing 30-year-old trips, and that is kind of crazy.
That's because people have money now. It's crazy. I was like, I didn't have money for a trip at 30.
Neither did I.
We're going to Cheesecake Factory, y'all.
Oh my God, that sounds so delectable.
So before we go too deep, Judson and I sent this to you, were interviewed a number of weeks back by the Gay City News.
Yeah, I love them.
And one question we were asked that actually didn't make it into the story was how we were going to work with guests, how we were going to have guests on the show. And Judson gave a really great answer in the moment that I kind of wanted him to repeat or, rehash, because I think it's appropriate to, obviously, today, but also just to how we think about things at Dads and Daddies.
Whenever you invite a third into an existing relationship, be it a sexual threesome or
Familiar.
a first-time interviewer, that person is looking for direction, right? Like they're entering into arrangement which they may or may not know about, either because of previous discussion or what they've been able to find out online. So it's our duties as dad and daddy to attend to your needs and make you feel comfortable and give you a platform for discussing what is going on in your big adult gay life.
Oh, wow. People could learn so much from you about that. That was really great. Keep going. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. I'm
No.
feeling very held and taken care of right now.
And in order to do that, we have a question for you to get started. You ready?
Yeah, hit me.
What is your daddy issue?
Okay, it's interesting and funny that, I should have expected this, one, because Brian told me this question was going to happen, and two, this is the Dads and Daddies podcast. But it's so funny because I had so many growing up. I'm thinking literally as a child, daddy issues. And I just did a show, speaking of shows, at the Standard Hotel, hosted by Peyton Dix, hilarious, wonderful writer, social media personality, that was called Daddy Issues, where you had to sort of write an essay and deliver it about a daddy issue that you had. So I've already recently talked about this topic or thought about this topic. So I'll mention that, but that's not actually, but that's a daddy issue from the past, right? That was something that I was going through as a child. Basically, long story short, my dad wanted me to play baseball and I wanted to take tap dancing lessons. So I called the cops on him, which isn't very normal. So you should be prepared. You have daughters.
Oh my God, I know.
And they have phones. So just at any point, they
do
can just
not
go
yet.
boom, boom, boom. Oh, when they do have phones, one day they will have
We're
phones.
holding off until they're maybe 21.
Oh, for good reason. So I wrote an essay about that and sort of talked about that experience. And now my dad and I, thick as thieves, I actually play softball for fun with Vanity Fair. We have a media softball league. So we've really come a long way. So that's not really my daddy issue.
But did the police come to your home?
Oh, of course they did. I was like, my dad's being really mean to me right now. I'm really upset. And they were like, oh, we're on our way. And then they got there and they were like, what's the issue? And I was like, well, I don't want to play baseball anymore. And he says, I still have to play baseball and I want to take tap dancing lessons. And they were like, okay, so that actually isn't illegal. nothing sort of illegal or violent or anything really bad.
How old were you at this point?
I was 13, so which is way too old to do that. But again, I was a theater kid, a dramatic, had a lot of emotions.
Did this happen in a place where there wasn't other crime to tend to?
Oh yeah, I was South Orange, New Jersey. I'm from the suburbs of New Jersey. It was people were just sort of sitting at the park. They weren't breaking into homes or whatnot. There was not a lot of crime to bust, so they could make a house.
So they were
call.
kind of excited.
I think they were like, wow, there might be something. Maybe he's in trouble. Maybe there's a problem. Maybe there's something bad that's happening. But
Let's go break this up.
I was just having a brat summer, way too early.
I'm going to stop you right there. I just heard this phrase for the first time on Slack at work.
Okay, cool job.
I don't know what it is.
Oh my gosh, brat summer. Now I said, Brent, do you know what brat summer is?
It's summer of 2024 because of Charlie XCX.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's summer of 2024 because of Charlie XCX. Her album is Brat. She's sort of taken the color chartreuse green and sort of made her that's her color. And everyone's having a brat summer and doing things like threesomes and calling the cops on their dad. That's what you do in a brat summer. But that really isn't my daddy issue. But I just had to. It was the first thing I had to say that.
Okay. So what is your daddy issue?
Okay, that is such a good question. So I guess in adulthood, it sounds so silly because I'm you're both married. I know this. I listened to the pod, and I recently moved in with my boyfriend, which is great and wonderful and good, but it just is different.
Yes.
It's just different. And I'd never lived with a partner like that before. So I guess the daddy issue is sharing space and time and managing time, sharing space and managing time.
Yes.
With a daddy. And I don't know if, like, so my boyfriend John, he would probably not self-identify as daddy, but I'm going to identify for him as daddy. And especially in our relationship, 12-year age gap, he would be fulfilling. He's cemented in that position.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess sharing, two men sharing space.
Yeah. You moved in earlier this year.
Yeah, I moved in a couple months ago, March.
From Brooklyn to the Bronx.
Brooklyn to the Bronx.
Critical component here.
That is huge.
Did you move into his existing space?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you find a new holistic space together?
We did not find a new holistic space together. He owns his apartment. It's his space. A space that I had been visiting for years upon years.
His and his dogs.
His and his dogs. His and his dog space. So, and I love his dog. That's on the record. I love his dog. Sometimes people I'm not like an animal guy. Sorry, I know that's like sacrilegious to say, but like I get accused sometimes of not liking his dog enough. I like his dog, and this is for being recorded, right?
Yes, it's on the record.
It's on
Chris,
the record.
I'm more likely to tell people that I'm a crystal meth addict than that I don't like dogs.
Now that's putting words in my mouth because I didn't say I didn't like dogs. I said I am not an animal person. The language is very important here.
The point being, with the meth thing, there are questions, and with the animal thing, there's just judgment.
It's simply judgment. That is so true.
So
Oh my
you
gosh.
have moved into someone else's space.
Yeah.
Tough question here. Do you sometimes feel like a visitor?
Yeah, I guess like less of a visitor. I guess interloper is a word for visitor. So I guess that would you hit the nail on the head. And this is, again, maybe this goes back to my childhood trauma of like wanting things exactly what I want when I want them and having to have them. I don't feel like there are many things that are mine. Although, like John did an amazing job of moving all my stuff in. My mirror is there. My desk is there. My chairs are there. Like all my really incredible job. And he did most of the work because I was in LA. Like I really couldn't physically be present to move myself in. Like goes above and beyond. And he listens to this podcast, so people listen to this. So shout out, hi John. But
Hey, John.
So yeah, sometimes less of a feeling of being a visitor, more of a feeling of like, okay, where's my stuff? Where's my room?
Right.
This is his room.
Right.
Where's my room? Where's my pillow? Like stuff like that. Which again is so brat. It's so bratty. But I'm a little bit of a brat. I always have been a little bit of a brat. And I don't mind. I'm embracing it. It's okay. Though it's not good. Don't be.
You're even drinking out of a brat green thermos.
Yes,
today.
I really am. Wait, this is gorgeous. Oh gosh, it is. This is so perfect. It's like you knew.
Sorry, go ahead, Judson.
I was gonna say I had a similar experience before my husband and I moved into the apartment in Brooklyn where we live now, and we're able to like build and curate it together. I moved into his existing space, and it's not to say that I felt like a visitor all the time.
Yeah.
I think he did an amazing job creating space for my things and making me feel welcome. But because it was a small space to begin with and he had lived there for so long, it was already kind of full of his stuff. So it's like, do we get rid of this? Do we get rid of that? And the flip side of that, and he pointed this out, I think correctly, is because I felt like a bit of a visitor, and because my financial commitment to the space was different than it is now, I would let certain things about the space that bothered him slide. Like I tried to keep up with the laundry and the dishes and the all the things that make a house run, but that the windows need washing or something like that. I'm like,
That's not my. That's like these aren't my windows.
It was our apartment when I wanted to feel included, and it was his apartment when this kind of shit came up.
Yeah, whenever anything bad happened, it's so funny. Literally yesterday, I was like working from home, so I did the laundry, and I think. Obviously, I'm a lovely partner to have, and so wonderful, and so attentive, and great at helping with the house stuff. Which is not true. I'm actually not really good at any of that. I'm not very good at any of that. So, like, when John came home, he was like, oh, my God. Like, you did the laundry. Like, that's so amazing. That's so incredible. I was like, yeah, I guess I could. I could pull my weight in that way a little bit more. But, and that is, like, shared at the spoil of our clothes, right? But, like, for things that are like, we saw a mouse in the kitchen, like, not too long ago, which I've never, in all my years of living in New York, I've never had, like, a mouse problem ever. And I don't think we have a problem, but there was definitely a mouse in the kitchen. And I was like, That's something that you're gonna have to figure. That I
There's a
can't really
mouse.
get. I
You have a
can't.
mouse problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you.
FYI.
No, I can't. Okay, then I have to move. Then I have
That
to
was
leave.
what I had a mouse. I saw a mouse when I was living by myself in the West Village once, and I would not go to sleep that night. I had to find a 24-hour exterminator, which was not cheap.
Yeah, I feel like that doesn't even exist anymore.
And all I remember was that I was watching the Drama Desk Awards on New York One, and
Likely thing for you
so
to
it
be
was a
doing.
Sunday night, and I just thought I have to move. I can't.
Did you move?
I shortly thereafter. We did in the current house we live in. At one point, had a mouse problem, but we got traps and we solved the problem. So it is solvable.
It feels solvable, and that's. I was bringing that up only to say, like, it's solvable. I won't be the one running point on
No,
that.
thank God. But that's what a partnership is about. I mean, like, we each in our house have our roles, and
Yeah.
Toby knew that solving the mouse problem was on him.
Was on him, and that's okay. You have to split responsibilities.
Yes.
and you have to, and that's what being an adult is. That's being a dad is
Yep.
taking some things on and also letting somebody else do some stuff.
Yeah. I was in the opposite role. Toby moved into my place when we first got together after we had only been dating for about 6 months. But, that's often how things work in New York because why pay 2 rents? And so if a lease is up, you move in together if you're already spending all that time together. And I actually completely redecorated the house. Like we repainted everything. We
Like right when he moved in.
Yes, because when we met, my apartment was not to his taste at all.
Can you describe what your apartment looked like before Toby moved in and made you absolutely redecorate?
He jokes that so my husband is a ginger and my dog is a ginger and the walls of my house were a light orange and I had like a orange shag rug, and so
Oh man, you have an orange fetish.
I did because
This
why?
room is orange, I will say.
Oh yes, we're sitting in a burnt orange room, but the reason was because like I was trying at one point to go for mid-century and realized that like 70s was much cheaper and like everything in the 70s was orange.
Yeah. That's fair.
So, and I had gotten a lot of stuff from like St. Vincent de Paul, like, and so it was like a lot of like shag and orange and amber and browns. Anyway. And so I convinced myself that orange was my favorite color. And so he came in and he jokes that like the second that he picked me up for our first date, because he came to the apartment, was he was like, wait a minute. The walls are orange, the carpet's orange, the dog is orange, and I'm orange.
I'm orange.
Wow.
So I knew that if he was going to move in, we needed to make some changes. And so I think that helped him, feel a lot that it was a lot more.
And he was consulted in those changes.
Oh
right? Like,
no,
it wasn't just like, we're
I
going
was
purple.
so and am so, but was so head over heels in love that like.
He could have said, let's
Yeah,
paint
I mean,
the
this was
walls.
also. I mean, you were moving in after how many years?
Oh, like years. I guess we met. Ooh, gosh. We met Pride 7 years ago because I cut him in line at a lady fag party.
That is such a great meet cute.
I mean, it's better than Hinge, I'll say. No shade to that, but that is actually how we met. And then for years, we were sort of, like hooking up on and off, sort of like casual, because I was, in my early mid 20s, I was like, I'm not going to date anyone.
Right.
I've got to have fun and run around. And I did have fun and run around, but he was always in the picture.
Yeah.
And then like sort of like going right into the pandemic, like we were sort of getting more serious, like in like the beginning of 2020 and whatnot. And then the pandemic hit, went our separate ways for like months. I was quarantining in New Jersey with my family, and I have no idea where he was actually. But then he reached out and he was like, do you want to come upstate with me and like my friends and like quarantine in a house together for like a month in the Catskills? And then I did that, and then I think we sort of fell in love there, and I was like, and then the rest I'm not really a sentimental person or like good at earnestness.
Goes
so
with
that,
not being an animal
yeah,
person.
it sort of does actually.
But yeah, so for me, like Toby moved in at 6 months, so I was still like head over heels in love and was going to do anything he wanted, and so that might have had.
I moved in pretty quickly too because I had actually left for I met Bruce in November. The following summer, I moved to Fire Island because I got a job there for the summer.
Whoa.
So
How do I not know this about you?
A full job. What was your job?
I was the assistant manager of the Madison Guest House.
Ooh.
I also worked at the Blue Whale. I was fucking exhausted, and I got deeply addicted to crystal meth to stay awake to do all of my jobs.
That does sound like a place where that could happen. That does sound like a recipe. Wow.
But we met in November. I moved to Fire Island in May, and I put my apartment in Jersey City up for sublet. So when I would come back into the city, which was rare, like maybe for 1 or 2 days every 2 or 3 weeks, I would just stay with him. And we got used to that. So when I moved home from Fire Island the following fall, I just we moved in together.
Right.
I kept the apartment in Jersey City because Airbnb was relatively new. Keep in mind, this was like almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
So you could get like a really decent price for a shitty apartment on Airbnb in Jersey City. So I just stayed there during the week, rented it out on the weekends, and lived with him on the weekends. But it was always like his space.
His space.
Right.
But you sort of like soft launch. I mean, like a little piecemeal, like moving in, a soft launch moving in, sort of, with those weekends. Okay, that is fascinating.
But I think the thing that helps take ownership of those kind of situations or spaces is an act of volunteering to do the work, like the unfun stuff of cohabitating. And there often ends up being a sort of like natural split. Like even now, like I am the one that cleans the kitchen and the bathrooms, and Bruce is the one that like vacuums and dusts, whatever. We fall into these things kind of naturally, but it's like taking on some of the annoying house shit.
Well, yeah, that's the nice thing, I think, being in a relationship where we have kids, that the two dad thing really helps because we just kind of fall into roles that feel natural to us and are not the predetermined roles by.
And the two kid thing because they do all the housework.
Yeah, right.
They're just constantly. I hear them scrubbing right now.
Oh yeah.
They're just sweeping upstairs.
They're growing up very differently than I did. We were little chore boys. Is what we were.
Really?
Our kids do not go to bed until they've cleaned up their whatever areas they've been playing in the house.
That's good.
And they do a great job at it. Toby jokes that our older one, the worst thing she ever did for herself was show how great she can be at cleaning up because now she has to do it every
High
single night.
expectations. I love that.
Yeah. No, but because like there's not that predetermined like roles because we're two guys, like we just fall into what feels most natural to us. So like the kitchen is his domain. Both from like the cooking, but also the cleaning. But then the bedtime routine is entirely my domain, and getting them, to brush their teeth and get changed and finally go to sleep and leave me alone. Like that's
your
that's my domain. Yeah,
that is so interesting. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess we're still figuring that out because it was almost like 6.5 years of like being together in some capacity before I moved in. Like we're both very good at doing our own
right.
doing everything completely separate. So then it's like, okay.
That was the other thing you touched on. It's not just about cohabitating, but also like the time management of it all, right? Because, we've been talking about this a lot. Judson's husband is about to go off for a week to Provincetown, and Judson is very excited about his week
of not reporting to someone, right? It's like I have a few little sexy bad boy things planned that I could have planned anyway were he around. But in his absence, like I just get to focus on my schedule, my space, my things. He and I will like talk or text throughout the day. And I wouldn't do anything. I'm not going to do anything in the coming week that I wouldn't do were he around, which is historically untrue as a drug addict, but we're in a good place there. But it's just so nice to just be able to do the thing without reporting the scheduling back to someone.
Yeah,
right.
I totally get that, especially because for so much of like my relationship, I was in Brooklyn, he was in the Bronx, so it was like kind of different. Like unless we were making an active effort,
relationship.
Very much so. People are like, "Oh, like, that's like it's a long distance relationship," but it really is. It, like actually, it really is quite far. So, if we weren't hanging out, like I could, I go and like hook up with someone in my neighborhood and then go get my favorite coffee and then go get a drink with a friend and like not have to be like, oh, are you going to be home for dinner? Like, oh, we've got like none of that, and got pretty used to that as the rhythm and whatnot. But now, boom, like we're together all the time and whatnot. And still, like my job, like I have to go often to like the financial district for work, and that's like it takes time. And so like he'll be like, and he works in the neighborhood, so like he'll come home and be like making dinner, and then like I'm like an hour away, and then he'll fit it. It's just like making things work where like that is sometimes more difficult than like when we were so far away. We had to make so much more of an effort and just be like, okay, this is the plan, this is what's happening, boom. But now it's like it gets mushier, I guess.
Yeah.
If you were to, it's funny, if you were to ask anyone who's in a longer term relationship, I don't want to say serious because ours is deep and not serious. It is longer term.
I love that.
If you were to look at your text messages, dead ass, it's like 90% logistics, and then 10% like, here's this meme I kind of thought of you about.
I could pull up my phone and scroll,
and the rest
there's a meme
is
and
just scheduling.
Just scheduling and logistics, and it's like it's crazy, and it's like. It's funny that you mentioned Fire Island because before, when we didn't live together, like the time that we would spend like a lot of time together is when we would go to Fire Island, like for these weeks, and like it was like really, and that was sort of like our soft launch living together. But then that is like Fire Island is an insane place, as you mentioned, and there's like boys and friends and drinking and drugs and all these things that sort of like are not present in the day, at least in my day-to-day life of like, oh, I'm gonna go to work and then like I'll go to the gym and then like come home and eat and watch Jeopardy and then maybe read a little bit and then go to sleep. That like is a standard. Not that I have that many like standard nights, but that is like a standard evening.
Yeah, you don't seem to have many standard nights.
No, because I like to go to a show or see a show or be in a show or I think he's more used to standard nights. Like he has more sort of standard.
Right.
He's got a more standard schedule, more not standard job, but just like isn't running around as much. And I love to run around and go see this show or see this friend or go to this event or do, and I have to for work and for my job and life. So it's not like completely indulgent, but getting on the same page with that. Like when we weren't living together, like I just did whatever I wanted and sometimes would
Does
make
he
time.
join you for shows and...
Yeah, so like this week we saw O'Mary. Shout out. Hilarious. Everybody should go run, don't walk.
We were there last night.
Oh, you went to the opening.
We were at the
Okay. I was
opening.
there the day before you. And so John and we went to that together. And then last night, I had an extra ticket to Open Throat, which is just this weekend. So at Little Island, which is also very good. And I was like, I sort of asked a couple friends. They couldn't make it. I was like, Johnny, if you want to come, you can come. And he was like, actually, I don't really feel like it. So it's like, he taps in and he taps out. And I think a good thing about a relationship is like, there's no like expectations or like real disappointment. I'm not like, oh my God, I can't believe that he didn't come with me to this thing.
Right.
Or like, he's not like, oh my gosh, like he didn't ask me, or like, it's very much like, come as you are. If you can make it, great. If you can't, it's all right. There's not like that sort of pressure, which I think is good because I ultimately am going to do what I want to do.
Right. Well, I mean, we talk a lot about freedom and just like, I think that the more you can provide that for your partner, but also find it for yourself, that's what is going to, in my opinion, help sustain a long-term relationship, because it's the lack of autonomy that I think is what kills relationships.
Oh, totally.
And for us, we've talked about like with Toby and me, and obviously our lives are structured around having kids. So that kind of helps in a way because for us, first of all, we alternate who gets up with the kids each morning.
Okay.
And then once the kids are out of the house, whether it's school or camp or whatever it is, I don't really know what he's doing and he doesn't really know what I'm doing. It's just like... And I don't even really, I said this to him recently and he said, oh, that's funny, you could. But I don't really even ask him how his day was. Because to me, that's strangely an intrusive question. Like I will ask him specifically, like, how did work go today? Or how was this appointment? If I knew that he was doing something. But I don't ever want him to feel like he has to like report back what his, what he was doing.
First I did this and I did
today.
this.
Yeah, and we're open, and we've been like, especially I think even because of this podcast, even more and more and more communicative about that activity. But historically, he hasn't really he's kind of preferred a don't ask, don't tell policy around that. And so, so yeah, I'm asking like, how was your day? What'd you do today? Always to me has felt even intrusive, which kind of sounds funny. But then once the kids are here, then it's all of us, unless we have plans to see a show. We were given advice when we were pregnant with our first kid that the marriage always has to come first. And so we take that very seriously. And, we believe that happy parents make for happy kids. And so we do prioritize nights out and we see a lot of theater. But so I always, on all the apps, I always people are like, when can you hook up? I'm like, well, Monday through Friday from like 9 to 4.
Yeah,
essentially.
sort of that is the window.
And outside of that,
window.
We are each other's, priority, or the family is. That being said, like if one of us gets an invite that doesn't include the other one, we're totally free to do that. But that's at least how we have figured out the freedom thing. It's like you've got these hours that are entirely yours, and then
I'm not going to press or pry. I like that. I would say. I mean, John and I are also open. I like to use the word modern, but open. And having it sort of was because that was always like that's how it started, and that's like so just the only logical. I mean, I also like my freedom, and he likes his freedom and autonomy and whatnot. So for everything that you just said, for all those wonderful reasons. But we've also sort of have a more, I think, laissez-faire approach to the openness than like, okay, well, these are the rules and you have to commit, which rules can be really helpful. And sometimes we're like, okay, maybe more rules would be helpful when things are, get a little sticky or situations or a little, feelings may get a little, ramped up or ramped down. But I do think there's such a level of trust and support there that like I trust him, he trusts me. Like
that's what it's all about.
And that is that is what it's about. So I'm not really worried. It's like I don't like sometimes, and also it depends. And I'm a moody person, so sometimes I'm like I'm really into like hearing and seeing like him hook up someone else or like hearing. But also sometimes I actually don't want to. Sometimes I'd rather not know. Sometimes I don't really need all the details. And I'm like, I'm actually busy. I'm writing a story right now. I'm trying to focus on this thing. I don't need to hear about how you got your dick sucked at the steam room. I'm like, so I'm a pretty laissez-faire, go with the wind, go with the flow type of guy with this stuff. And it works for us, but I am curious if, how other people make their open relationships work, because they don't always work.
Well, I was talking to a colleague the other day who had shared with me that he's getting married, and we have a good work friendship, right? And my work environment is pretty chill anyway, and not like I go around at work like I'm fucking other people besides my husband.
That's your Slack. You Slack everybody.
But yeah, busy and open.
That would be great.
He asked me, I don't remember how it came up, and he's like, aren't like all gay dudes like in open relationships? And I just said, it's a choice within the partnership, but I do think there's a lot that straight people can learn from the idea of an open relationship, even if they are sexually monogamous.
Yeah.
Like if I were to give you any advice, it's obviously unsolicited, but you're in your 20s and I'm in my 40s, so I'm going to pull rank here. Like, you need to give this woman a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You need to give this woman a lot of freedom to live her life and do her thing, and you will get it in return. And the more jealous that you get and the more clingy you get to her time, the quicker it's going to drive her away.
Yeah.
That is, how did he respond to that? I think that is great advice, but I like... Always with straight people, not always with straight people, with many straight people and straight friends, it's such an ocean of like apart, like the idea of an open relationship, not necessarily the idea of freedom, but it's like hard to bridge the gap. So I'm curious how he responded.
I mean, his response was fairly typical in that I don't think straight guys are very quick to admit that they're like learning something or that they're like
they don't want to be vulnerable
or that they're like being humbled in that moment. So he was like, yeah.
Right.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would not have offered this had we not established a relationship over years.
Totally.
And nor did I even say like I'm in an open relationship. I just said, many gay men are. It isn't necessarily about sex. Like it's about the freedom, about the autonomy. Ours, Bruce and I are somewhere like in between you two. Like I don't know if I report every single incident to him. I don't think he reports every single incident to me. We do like to share. We do like to swap notes. But scheduling does become a thing because we do cohabitate. So I actually have a preference for travel just because it makes it easier for me to go somewhere else as opposed to like go to my husband, find out what his work schedule is like.
Yeah.
Who are you, like, when are you out with friends? When are you playing tennis? I want to host here, which again makes this coming week very easy.
Yeah.
Because I can just do, and even if I don't have any sex, it's just like the option is there, and that's nice.
That is nice. I mean, that's interesting. And I should say it's like, especially now that I moved into John's, it's our apartment. He's always like, it's our apartment, but it's John's apartment. Like I haven't like I haven't invited like a guy from the neighborhood there because it feels like it's his, like that's his house. Like I don't know. I've much more travel out, go out into the world.
Yeah.
I've always been more oriented because I've always had roommates. I've always been more travel than host. But now it just, and that's like, I guess I'm like, oh, I'm so modern and whatnot. But like, I just feel maybe it's antiquated. But I'm like, oh, like I'm not going to invite some guy that he doesn't know and have sex with him in his house. Like that. Seems...
Well, so we have essentially only two rules. When we started, it seems just from like the ether that like if you're going to go into an open relationship, you need to set up a set of rules, and so that's what we did at the beginning. But like you said, it's all about trust, and the only reason we could even enter into an open relationship to begin with is because the trust is so solid. And what we realized very quickly, at least to my mind, is that rules are just kind of proof that there isn't the trust. Like if you trust enough, then you don't need the rules. But we do have two rules, and it's more about the family than it is about any kind of trust issues, which is that we don't host because inviting somebody into our family home and like there's family pictures all over the place. It just feels gross.
Fair.
And then the other one is that it can't impact family time. So that's why it typically happens, like I said, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. But so I mentioned that we alternate who gets up with the kids each morning. And on weekends, what that means is whoever gets up early with the kids gets a few hours off in the afternoon to nap or whatever because they were up early. And for the very first time recently, I went out on a hookup during that period, which we like felt a little bit like...
But that's your time.
That was my time. And the funny thing was, like, I wasn't going to say anything to him. But then when I walked back in the house, he was sitting right in the front. He's like, "Oh, I didn't even know you left the house." I was like, "Yeah." Well, and I told him what I just did, and he like couldn't have cared less. It was my time.
It was your time. But I get that at being like, "Ooh, like this is the first time especially the first time of sort of broaching that and of having that experience that can be a little like jittery. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting to see you sitting right here.
Yeah.
And even as you explain how you have this like division of labor within your family, I'm childless. It makes so much sense to me. Yeah. I'm just like, why? I'll say what I was going to say. I was like, why are straight parents so fucking tired all the time? Is it because they are not giving each other these kind of breaks? Like, I understand that child rearing is exhausting, but I'm
tired all the time.
If you have two parents, why do both parents have to be at all the things all the time? Especially coming from a generation where none of the parents were at any of the things any of the time. Like, it feels like an overcorrection.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That is such a good... I guess I'm a little bit after. My parents were at something sometimes, but they both worked for like... Yeah, I guess like the parents, like, they don't care. They were... Yeah, you just did it yourself.
No, I mean, listen, it is exhausting being a parent regardless, but I do think we have it better than most. So we do have a Go Ask Your Dad question that we're going to include Chris on.
Ooh, I love to be included.
So I want to get to that. But before I do that, I just want to have a little bit of a pop culture moment with you because, like, as you already learned from Judson not knowing the Brat Summer reference, like, I don't always get to do this. So I'm going to have it take a moment.
Throw it on me.
Joyride?
Oh, is that the Kesha? I'm sorry. I've been so busy bumping Katy Perry's Woman's World. That's not true. It's a really terrible song made with an abuser, Dr. Luke. So boo, Katy Perry.
Oh.
Kesha's, Kesha was like my shit. I was the
Yes.
exact perfect age to be obsessed with her. Saw her open for Rihanna in like 2011. Like TikTok hit when I was like 17.
Right.
So I do love her and like love her music. And I like what direction. I'm always gonna be nostalgic for like old Kesha,
Yeah.
like Animal Kesha and like, you know, See You Next Tuesday Kesha,
Right.
you know.
This feels like a return.
It feels like a return, but it also feels like she's kind of trying to do a little bit of what the new girls are doing, like the Charlie and the Camila Cabello, and like all like which is good. You want to evolve and you want to stay current and you want to stay relevant. And I'm just happy she's back in the game. It's not my favorite from her,
No.
but I do like it. I'm proud of her, and I enjoy it. And we'll never get back to before, you know. So I have to let go of 2010's Kesha.
Have you gotten a chance yet? It only came out yesterday to listen to My Oh My, the Kylie Minogue, BB Rexa.
No, I
and
haven't.
Tuvalu song.
No, I haven't listened. I haven't listened to Tuvalu yet. Or is it good?
It is good, yeah.
I love Kylie. BB Rexa, I think, is one of the funniest pop women that we have. I hesitate to say star, but that's just me.
Right.
And then Tuvalu is, you know, she's bangers after bangers.
Yeah.
And after RuPaul called her Tuvalu, it's just so fun. So fun to say.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you know this yet. I talk about it on one of the episodes, but so our younger one, for her talent show at school this year, performed to the Kids Bop version of Padam Padam.
Wow, that is iconic.
Yeah, and so at 5, she's already Kylie Minogue obsessed, and so I was playing My Oh My in the car yesterday, picking them up from camp, and she's already decided this is what she wants to perform next year's talent show too.
Oh, okay, choose early. We love it.
And she, we're driving home from camp. She's 5 years old. I don't even know how she knows what this means, but she says, "Does Kylie Minogue have any Grammys?"
Oh, she's after my own heart. I love it.
So we went through, Kylie's 2 Grammys. I had to play "Come Into My World" for her, which was Kylie's first Grammy. And I shared this with friends of mine on text who are like my circle of friends who are like most pop music obsessed.
Yeah.
And our friend Kenji texted back, "Can you please teach Joni how many Grammys Katy Perry has? It's important for her to know."
The answer is 0.
The answer is 0.
Oh, Kenji, that's so funny. And, you know, the hardware, that she's smart. Not that awards matter, but they don't not matter. So, you know.
And I have not brought myself to listen to Woman's World yet because...
It sounds like AI in a way that is like scary. Like, oh, is this the future of like art? Is this where we're headed?
Oh, no.
And I want to give
this is why Katy Perry has no Grammys.
This is why Katy Perry has no Grammys. This is why she has no Grammys. It's like a parody. It sounds like a parody song that, like, if you were given a RuPaul challenge, even though RuPaul, some of those songs are bangers, to be like, write a song
RuPaul's one of my favorite pop stars.
Some of those songs really hit. Kitty Cat. But back to the other Kitty Cat. The Katy Perry song sounds like you ask like 7 people to be like, okay, you have 10 minutes, write a song from a woman's perspective.
Right.
And let it rip.
I did respond to my friend Kenji that we've protected our youngest from knowing who Katy Perry is anyway, so I don't have to.
Well, at some point she's gonna have to listen to Teenage Dream, and
Yeah.
that is iconic,
Yeah.
and see her Super Bowl performance, which was also iconic. But yeah, diminishing returns there.
Yeah,
Diminishing
okay.
returns.
I'm happy to hear that. I did see your post on your Instagram stories of you dressed as a nun holding a gravestone that said, what does it say?
Katy Perry, please stop.
Katy Perry, please stop.
But famously, I wasn't ahead of the curve, but this was like 4 years ago or 3 years ago for Halloween, I guess, yeah, and a couple years ago, I dressed up as the nun that was engaged in a lawsuit with Katy Perry because Katy Perry wanted to buy the convent from the nun for her like 4th house or whatever, and the nuns were like, we live here, don't buy the convent. And somehow like a judge like ruled to like sell it to Katy, so the nun sued Katy Perry, and then literally, I think her name was Sister Catherine Rose Helsman.
You think?
That's what happened at the top of my head. Sister Catherine, her last words before she dropped dead were, "Katy Perry, please stop."
Is that true?
It's absolutely true. And then she died. R.I.P., of course.
That's amazing.
She was a nun from 18 years
and
old.
so you
on.
reposted that this morning in reaction to listening to
Women's World. Because we can't forget, and that's what, Sister Catherine would want me to do that.
Yes,
She would
absolutely.
That's justice for Sister Catherine.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, right? You good?
I'm doing great. I was just sitting here humming Britney Spears lyrics to myself
That
while
was-
that whole thing happened.
That's great. You didn't miss
So,
anything. It was
like
totally...
I went through Ooh La La from the Smurfs 2 twice.
Oh, wow. That is
Well, that's a
deep cut. That is a deep cut.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back with Go Ask Your Dad. Go Ask Your Dad is our advice segment. If you have a question that you would like to submit to us to address on the pod, you can DM us at Dads and Daddies Pod. You can email us at dadsanddaddies@gmail.com. You can go to dadsanddaddies.com and submit it that way. Write us out a question, send us a voice memo, however you like, but we would love to hear your questions. We will always remind you that we are not mental health professionals. We are just gay men out here living our lives and giving you our personal thoughts and opinions. So please take it at that. Chris is still with us.
Yes, I am. And I actually am a doctor. I should have mentioned that. I can't believe I forgot. I always forget. I'm a senator and a doctor.
Wow.
So please, yeah.
His advice tonight is legit. It's not advice. It's a prescription.
This question came to us this week via an Instagram DM, and it is relevant to all three of us. Is age just a number, or should there be an age gap limit between younger adults and older adults?
Who wants to go first?
Chris, you should take it away. But first, what's the difference between you and John?
Okay,
Yeah.
the difference between me and John is I round up to 12 years, but really it's like 11 years and 7 months.
Okay.
So I was 23 and he was 35 when we met, which on a different podcast, Seek Treatment, they said was a really hot age difference. And I agree. I do think it really works. And I might sound, again, I think the key word here is obviously adults. If you're both adults, I don't give a fuck.
Right.
The age difference. I honestly think people who are so obsessed with it are like weird, and it's so boring to be with someone who's maybe exactly your same age. It's so much more part of the thing that I love the most about a relationship. I think something that like was why we connected because we had so much to like learn and teach each other and grow from it, all these sort of different experiences. And I think not to be like 12 years is the perfect difference. Where he says that we're the same generation, I actually don't believe that's true. He says he's like old millennial and I'm a young millennial, but he's Gen X. And I think that's what I'm going on record as saying.
Wait,
that.
how old is he?
He's 42. And now I'm 30.
Oh, he's like right on the cusp.
He's right on the cusp,
Yeah.
and he's like, I'm
and that
a
can
millennial.
go either way.
Exactly, and I'm pushing him up and over over the wall into Gen X land. But 12 years, it's really, it's like not so big that it's like okay, Grandpa, but it is nice because there's just he knows things that I've never even heard of, and I
Right.
can be like, look at this TikTok, Granddad, but he's actually way better at TikTok than I am. But I'm going to go on the record as being pro something of an age gap, if only to keep things spicy and interesting.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
I appreciate, Chris, that you said like between adults, because when this first question got asked, I thought, okay, like it only matters depending on the age of the youngest participant, right? Like when my husband was graduating college, I was 2. It was very hot.
Wait, what is
so
your
that
age
means
difference?
so that's got to
Remind
be
me?
like what? Let me guess. I'm really bad at math. You're 18 years apart.
It's 19.
Okay, I'm not as bad as math as I thought. Okay.
And when I was 16 years old, I was spending time with men in their 20s, men in their 30s, men in their 40s. And, I'm grateful for those experiences, but I'm also really happy that the more queerness becomes mainstream and the more young people can come out sooner and have queer contemporaries, they're not left out of the sexual awakening with their age mates, right? Like 13-year-old queer boys can hook up with 13-year-old queer boys now because there's like a pool of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So skipping past that into adulthood, I also thought our age difference was really hot. 27 years old, 47 years old. He was looking for fun and I was looking for stability. And it just kind of clicked. Like I'm waiting for the day to turn 47 and meet a 27-year-old just so I can be like, what the fuck were you thinking? Like
Like, oh, he was crazy.
But it also has to do with maturity, right? Like I had moved out of my parents' house as a teenager, and I had been I wouldn't say stable, but financially independent, always worked. So at 27, I was very, very mature in a way that someone who maybe even 40 at the time would not have been.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think for us, the age difference, I almost never think about it. I almost never think about it because there's so many things that we're into as a couple that I wouldn't say are like ageless or timeless, but we just have a lot of the same shared interests.
Yeah.
But even now, he is moving into semi-retirement. And what that meant for him, I started panicking. I'm like, what does that mean for us financially? What does that mean for my free time if he has more free time? And he explained to me simply, it just means that I'm starting to let go of feeling guilty about not being at work all the time. And I was like, oh, honey, that's generational as fuck. Like you are a 61-year-old boomer whose identity is closer tied to their vocation than I am as a 41-year-old elder millennial who's just trying to do something they kind of like to fund the rest of their life.
Right.
So in those differences, like it's an interesting conversation. But if you're adults, I do think an age difference makes it spicy, and there doesn't need to be a limit.
Yeah.
Except if they're very young, you need to be aware, like even in their 20s, your opinion really, really matters more the younger they are.
Yeah.
Right.
More influence. You have way more influence over them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Toby and I only have a 9-year age difference, so we're not
Okay,
nearly.
we're basically twins.
Yeah. Gross.
But the funny thing is, when in our first year of dating, there was one night that we went out to see. It was season 4 of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Setting the scene.
The Sharon Needles season.
Yes, of course.
This was like the turning point season. And so we went to go see a number of the queens from that season live, and including Sharon. And I had bought VIP seats. And we get there, and the VIP seats are around the dance floor at these raised, high tops. And but then there's this whole dance floor in front of us. And I'm like, well, WTF? So I made him go with me onto the dance floor so that I could be close to the stage, even though we had these like VIP seats. And then right before the show, they said to everybody, okay, if you're on the dance floor, you have to sit down. And so like all of our friends who we'd come with are sitting like nicely in these chairs, on these like comfortable chairs. And I made him sit like cross-legged, like
crisscross applesauce.
Yes. On this dance floor. And when we left there that night, he said, I think you might be too young for me. Because I'm just like, I will do these like...
That's so funny, but he's younger than you.
Yes, by 9 years. And no, that's the point, is that like, it's not about the age difference. It's about like a level of maturity.
Yeah.
And like, I just might not be as mature as my husband is sometimes.
And amazing back flexibility. Just really,
wow.
Really, yeah, he must really...
That was 12 years ago. Toby has crossed the point. So when Toby and I met, he was just about to turn 29, and I had just turned 38. He's now 41, so he has like passed that point of like being the age that I was when we met. And he has talked about how funny that is.
This is a yet for
Yeah,
both Chris.
we've got
yes.
some time. We got yeah. You got a little bit more time, but we both have some time.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, it's about maturity, it's about commonalities, it's about shared interests. And I've always kind of thought that in the gay universe, that a gay man's maturity has more to do with how long they've been out of the closet than like their actual age.
Chronological age.
Yeah.
That definitely feels true. Yeah.
And I also feel too, within the context of gay men, the age difference happens much more frequently or doesn't get looked at like so side-eye the way that it does in straight relationships, which I guess is not our problem. But straight people, that's maybe something you
guys
can
deal
work
with
on.
that. Yeah, they can deal with that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's just such a history of elders passing on information. Just there's something baked into queer culture of like that, like share that.
It's millennia old.
Yeah, millennia. Exactly. It is. It goes back into time. And I think
because we share this commonality, this oppression and this misunderstanding and this, there's all these things that make us gay that like no matter what age you are, you at least share that.
yes, in a real way. And I do think the main thing about the age gap is, Judson said, is like not taking advantage of that younger person.
Right.
As that person, if they have all their faculties and they're they're in a place to make that decision, then they should be absolutely allowed and encouraged to make that decision. But there shouldn't be undue influence or like taking advantage. And that is like easier said than done because then their lines get blurred. There's a lot of gray areas there. Yeah. I can understand, but I think having like a hard and fast rule, like if it's more than 8 years, then it's a deal breaker. It's like insane.
I do have one for hookups though. Honestly, just in my experience, I tend not to gravitate to any younger than like 23.
Yeah.
Like
but you've also said that this has to do with
is really pushing
not
it for
believing
me.
the ages on the apps too.
Oh yeah, that's a
like if
trust.
you have said that if somebody says they're 19 on the apps, they're in high school.
Yeah, correct. No one has ever been 19 actual years old in the history of the world.
It just doesn't exist.
So
it doesn't exist.
If they say 19,
it's a trap.
They're a sophomore.
Right.
That is actually so true.
At Bronx Science.
God, I probably could have tutored that person. Oh my gosh. No, I don't really suffer with this because I'm often looking older. Not that I wouldn't really go younger than 22, 21, 22 at this juncture. Just like, but also I'm like, what would I talk?
Also,
what would I talk to with a 19? Like,
you guys talk?
No, I mean,
I'm kidding. But I will say practice makes perfect, right? And so like I also just don't want to be with somebody that young because I want somebody who's going to be good in bed.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, that is an opportunity to be of
teach.
service.
Yes, to teach the youth.
You know that for me a hookup is 20 minutes. So
You're so good at times, regimented times.
I don't have the time to be a coach in this moment.
But somebody who should be teaching the 19-year-olds, 25-year-olds.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. It's not. It shouldn't be us. Like let a 24-year-old, let a 28-year-old. They can do the 19, 20, 21s.
We teach the 25-year-olds. The 25-year-olds pass it on.
That's the circle of life.
The 19-year-olds realize they're standing on the shoulders of giants.
They give us our flowers. That's exactly. That's what they do.
And I don't want to go down a whole path here, but like it's true for friendships too. I've also found in my older age that like I've developed really sweet friendships with people 40 years my senior. I was we're in a few weeks gonna have somebody on the pod. I hope, I think, who is 91, and he's a friend that I met at the Tiki Bar on Fire Island, like in Cherry Grove, that's attached to the Island Breeze.
Sandcastle? Or no,
and I was there waiting for a table for dinner. He was there waiting for a table for dinner. I was wearing a Lady Gaga shirt. He was wearing a zebra print shirt open down to his navel, and he just beckoned me over to start talking to me about Lady Gaga because he said, she played the Ice Palace before she was anybody. And we ended up having this great conversation. Our tables ended up being available at the same time, and the host was confused because we were talking. He said, "Oh, are you together?" And we kind of looked at each other and said, "Sure." And so Toby and I had dinner with him, his husband, and their friend, and have remained friends for years since. And he's become a good friend. And so, but I think that goes back to what you were saying about like in the gay community, we have this shared experience that like spans generations.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're really good at making friends based on T-shirts because that's how we met.
Yes.
in Fire Island.
I met Chris because I was mocking his. I said to you, that is brave to be wearing a Beanie Feldstein Funny Girl shirt.
That I was.
But I was just looking for any way to talk to Chris because look how cute he is. But
he's a total babe.
Yeah, believe me.
Just interjection here.
Yeah. Why do you think he's our first guest?
Woof.
Wow. I love being the third.
And he said, Beanie and I went to theater camp together.
That we did. Had to ride for my girl. But then that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
A beautiful friendship.
I wouldn't be sitting here if not
I know.
for that. And that is not that we're different generations, but like, there's an age gap here.
Yeah.
That like
20 years, yeah.
20, which is like, I think is so great. And that's the cool thing. Not, I guess I've been to so many straight weddings that it's so nice to be around gay people. Like that's such a great thing that we have in queer culture is that like that intergenerational, that point of connection and being able to like connect, talk, to connect to, someone who might be, 40 years your senior because you both love Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
I don't know if straight people have that in the same way. I don't think they do.
Not at all, because it's their parents and their parents' friends, and then the kids and their kids' friends, and never the two shall meet. Right? You're only ever going to see people 30 years older than you as your parents or like your parent adjacent, and because of the bizarre power dynamics there, it closes off the conversation almost completely. Not to say that it doesn't happen for straight people, but it's just not built in as part of the culture.
That is so smart because it's like no matter what, any gay guy who's like 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years older than me, they're never going to be my dad. They're gay. Dads can be gay, but it's like, it's different.
Yes,
it's a different,
totally.
Not to ruin the premise of the show, but it's just completely different. That familial element is sort of off the table from the beginning. So you can find other points of connection, which I think is very astute.
We could sit here and chat with you forever.
We're not going to?
We're not going to, but please come back.
I have
We'd
a
love
hookup to get to, guys.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this shit up.
It's your week. It's your week off. It's your week off. It's your week of freedom.
My husband's gone. I need to get home.
You got to get to it.
Thank you so much for being here.
This was an absolute pleasure.
For us,
this was
too.
so fun,
Truly.
and really a dream come true for us to have a guest and to have you be our first guest. Incredible. Come back next week. We're going to have a whole episode about role play.
Ooh, I'm tuning into that.
Good boy.
Oh my God, I got a little excited.
Have a good week, everyone.
See ya.